Hello everybody and welcome back to Dune Spice Wars, a game that I also have one copy left to give away over on my Twitter. In this video though, I'm going to take you through the best factions, my guide to the factions, what they do well, what play styles they suit, and how strong they are relative to everyone else, and maybe some insights into which one you should play. Without any further ado then, let's jump straight in with House Atreides. House Atreides is perhaps best for those who are just starting out. I think it captures a good blend of the three different strengths that Dune Spice Wars, or the three sort of different play styles that Dune Spice Wars encourages you to play, right? Military, diplomacy, and then sort of that espionage element as well. I think that House Atreides are probably therefore a fairly balanced pick for most people. They specialize in passive means for expansion, non-violent, peaceful annexation, largely. This is noted in their ability right here. Front up, first and center, passive annexation. This lets you take villages in 15 days, so it's a little bit slow, but you can do it without military units, and you can reach quite far away to grab them as well. You also lose no authority for treaties with other players, with other AI players, somewhat useful, allowing you to continue to annex while taking up some trade deals, and you benefit from having good council standing, so pay your taxes on time. Really, House Atreides is also not only sort of a generically good pick, but also the best pick for the diplomatic victory. You have the best chance of having a high council standing, you have the best chance of generating the most influence, and as you move through to 10,000 hegemony down here as well, you can ignore the charter prerequisites, except for the necessary Landsraad's standing. That means when you're in the council, maybe voting for the Speaker of the Council, who gets to re-roll a ballot, or perhaps the sort of war leader position at the Council, who gets to train a unique unit that has no manpower cost, right? These very powerful diplomatic positions, you are most likely to get them, and you don't even have to meet the other prerequisites to do so. At 5,000 hegemony as well, you can see that while you're under the effect of a positive resolution, again, ones that you're likely to have control over, you'll be making extra money. And if you're under the effect of a negative one, your units will have extra strength. So if you're being targeted, there's a little fallback there as well. Your strength here really is your influence, your votes, your standing with the council, and your diplomacy. While this video won't focus exclusively on the councilors, I'll save that for more of a well-formed tier list video that will be coming soon, and I'll have a note on that in the middle of this video as well, so stay tuned for that. I would just like to quickly touch base where I can on the councilors and provide some advice. I feel like while Duncan might seem good, the benefits are not absolutely massive. It's not a terrible choice, but there's a technology that can do this very early on. I don't think it's huge. Other initial bonuses, I would say that the spy bonuses provided here are okay, but maybe a little weak. For me, I tend to think that probably Gurney and Lady Jessica are the best picks. Certainly Gurney's extra military strength is really valuable here. Next, we have the big bad guns themselves. It's House Harkonnen. They're the other house in the game that does have better access to the Landsraad Council, although they're less likely to be a threat to Atreides. House Harkonnen is really designed to be the house if you don't want to bother so much with all that diplomatic nonsense, and instead stretch out with your military might. They're hefty, they're strong, they're powerful, and they harness the power of their villages through oppression as well. They really do seek to conquer the entirety of Arrakis, rather than perhaps work alongside it, or underneath, or in the shadows, like some other factions in the game. You can see their key faction ability is oppression. This is incredibly powerful. It's an ability that costs a little bit of manpower to activate. It lasts for a little while on your villages, and it sends their production of anything they're producing, including manpower itself, by the way, so you can kind of create a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy here with this ability. It really surges all of their production upwards. It's incredibly powerful. You also receive a bit of a bonus on your villages per active militia, so your defenses are also adding village bonuses, and you do get a little glimpse into how much influence other players have as well, so you can get an idea if you're going to win or lose a vote at the council, and whether it's worth you using your influence on it. At 5,000 hegemony, while at least one ally village is under your oppression ability, you'll get plus 10% unit power and plus 100% agent recruitment speed, which sort of leans through into hegemony, their final ability, where you can sacrifice your faster recruiting agents to essentially speed up operations and intel. This is nice, but probably less useful than the overall militaristic might that Harkonnen is putting down. Maybe more useful as a secondary backup, maybe an intel assassination attempt, or potentially using operations as sort of last-ditch efforts or power surges to weaken an enemy base, or use the combat drugs. A unique Harkonnen ability that lets your units keep fighting on 1 health, but their health deteriorates all the way down to 1, and then they'll sit there on 1 health, still fighting and taking no damage until the combat drugs operation wears off. On the councilors front, if you're interested in that mission cost, you'll really want to lean in here. I've personally found it to be pretty good, but my early instincts are really that there are 2 very strong picks and 2 weaker picks here again. I think this first pick, even though it's a hard one, is very powerful, using corruption on resolutions, causing a loss of council standing, very strong to weaken Atreides in particular, and bolster your own influence by killing rebels, which you'll have a lot of. I think this is probably a very powerful pick, and my early inclination is that Raban over here with the +1 militia slot, again, feeding into that initial bonus off of our villages, is probably the next best pick. Next up we have the Smugglers, an interesting house that sort of blends underground deception with overall control of the economy. You can think of the Smugglers faction as a very powerful economic faction, therefore. A victory through economic might and through using that economic might as a weapon against your foes as well. You can see their main faction bonus is to install underworld headquarters in opponents' villages. You click on them, it costs you a little bit of money and some authority. You install an underground headquarter on their villages, and then within that you can install improvements like you can on your main base to start to harvest or extract their resources, skimp a little bit off the top, weaken their military or their defenses, and also carry out statecraft actions as well around influence and diplomacy. That's essentially why you play the Smugglers. They also bleed through with a little ability to tamper with Atreides by placing bounties on the Landside Council resolutions, and you have improved interactions with the black markets. Basically, you have better access to resources. You can get valuable resources at a better rate than anybody else. The trade-off here is, of course, that you have limited access to the Landside Council, no votes for you, so you'll have to rely on influence there. At 5,000 hegemony, you get contraband special events, and you do get 50 votes at the council. Maybe you might want to start changing your tune, although it might not necessarily be enough. And then at 10,000 hegemony, you can train mercenary, and your mercenary units have plus 20% power. This is a nice little power boost around the mid-game. Playing the Smugglers fundamentally relies on your underground headquarters. This is your trump card. This is what sets you apart. It's for that reason when I look over toward the councilors, and I should note here that the Smugglers are probably the faction, the house that I've had the least amount of time with in the game so far, with my 30 or 40 hours or so played at the time of recording this video. However, I do think that probably this first one is a pretty good pick. This is essentially why we play Smugglers, to produce underworld headquarters. Why not get +5 money for adjacent region containing one, encouraging you to spread them throughout and allowing you to build more as they increase in cost and your upkeep increases too. And you also get +5 influence. This is sort of helping to fix a slightly weaker point for you and allowing you to stay as actually a reasonably powerful player at the council, particularly once you roll through that 5,000 hegemony point. The other pick here for me that I think is pretty good is probably the fourth pick. Gain 30% more plascrete when pillaging a village, and gain plascrete by pillaging a village. I think the AI might use this one a lot, and therefore it could be powerful, although I would note you can get some good early game bonuses here, and here you can definitely control more territory. It becomes more valuable as you control more land, so you might want to bear that in mind as to how you're shaping up with your overall strategy, because you may not be pushing out and grabbing a whole load more land necessarily. The water takes are nice though. And rounding out the final of the first 4 houses or factions added to Dune Spice Wars' early access, a reminder there will be more coming in future, is the Fremen. Before I talk about them though, I do just want to quickly note that I am giving 1 more copy of Dune Spice Wars away after giving 2 away live on stream recently. It was loads of fun and a little bit chaotic at the same time. I've got 1 more to give away on Twitter. If you want to know more about that, you can head over to Twitter or check out the YouTube community page where I talk a little bit about why it's being distributed on Twitter and also help you find me there. So, the Fremen, the only free native people to Arrakis that will do anything to protect the world against the off-worlders. The Fremen are a really interesting faction, therefore, in the game. As the natives to Arrakis, they tend to draw a lot of their strengths from the planet itself. Their worm-riding ability is incredibly strong. So very powerful, actually. And the Fremen also draw, really, to expand their influence by exploration. Through desert, through striking deals with the local sietch as well, those sort of barbarian tribe type locals. It can be a little bit more difficult and sort of in an opposite way to the smugglers to generate a very powerful income as the Fremen. Not impossible by any stretch, don't get me wrong, but it can be a little bit more difficult because they are almost certainly the least likely faction to access the Lansard Council. No way to get votes here, and you'll have difficulty generating extra sources of influence as well. Building on to their stylistic theme then, their military units have a minus 30% daily supply drain. Good for you to keep your units moving through hostile terrain without suffering health degeneration or health loss. You can also form alliances with sietch outside of your own territory. This is powerful if you've got lots of water to play. You can build up their votes in the council, potentially building some alliances, but really it's about the power of the sietch and the power of the individual sietch camp that you're dealing with. Finally, and perhaps maybe more importantly than the first 2, you can use thumpers for worm riding, a powerful ability that essentially encompasses natural existing airfield developments in all of the map, within a certain range, maybe 3-ish territories of where you're starting. You can ride under the ground relatively undetected and for free. And once you get to 5,000 hegemony, these things start to regenerate again passively. You have 3 total uses, but once you get here, your uses will start to regenerate. You'll find that while you still may need airfields to move around the map, that'll be in rare instances. The sandworms are brilliant. You travel farther at this point as well, incredibly strong for sneak attacks on an opponent or for quickly moving military units around to defend your spice deposits. At 10,000 hegemony, your military units, the ones that you're sneaking around or maybe more aggressively driving around on worms, will then gain power according to your hegemony, up to a 20% bonus at the very end of the game if the game ends via hegemony. A nice little military boost that helps you try and keep up with the rest of the factions. In terms of the councilor picks here, it's a neat one, really. I'm not entirely sure. In fact, I'm probably less certain on these than all others as to which are the best picks and which are the worst. This first option is neat because it gives you a way to tamper with the council by inciting rebellions. Essentially, you can really use this to your advantage to incite rebellion in districts where they achieved a positive vote. So if someone voted for a resolution and it passed, you incite a rebellion against them. You also get a little bit of intel generation. I'm not so sure that the second councillor is all that valuable. Maybe on larger maps, maybe isn't all that useful because you're probably only getting +1 or +2 authority kind of late in the piece. Revealing all spice with the third councillor is nice, although if you've got at least 2 scouts running in the early game, especially if you've got more than that, if you've found them through Goody Hut discoveries, then maybe not all that useful. Starting with the Shai Hulud Temple is also nice, provides some extra resources faster, but you don't get the other benefits that the technology that would normally provide this improvement would give you. I think it's a gold boost when liberating a village. It's still nice to have, but again, maybe not all that valuable. And then finally, the fourth councilor here, you can see plus 10% unit speed, and units gain sand killers when they have no allies nearby. So if there's just one unit, which could be useful, by the way, for stationing a unit to defend certain locations or territories, perhaps where you don't have any militia or where the militia have been wiped out, you get plus 20% power and plus 2 armor. It's also, of course, useful if your entire military gets wiped out. You can maybe get a last little stab in. The unit speed is good though, and actually, in my experience, pretty unique. I think this makes this one probably my preferred pick here. And before cutting to the outro, I'd also really love your feedback. How do you think they rank? How do you think I should rank them in my tier list video? I'm working on it at the moment. I'm going to work on it throughout the weekend. You should expect to see it uploaded around Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on how much sleep I want to get. But I'd love to know your thoughts, so please do comment them below and maybe upvote ones that you like the look of too, so I can get a feel for it. And that concludes my beginner's guide, look, walkthrough, explainer, whatever you want to call it, my faction guide to Dune Spice Wars. Thanks so much for all the support on the channel over the last few days, and on this video too. I'm really enjoying covering Dune Spice Wars. There'll be plenty more where that came from, as well as some of my usual favorites like humankind and civilization in the future as well. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time.